From the very beginning, the world seemed to have written Jungkook's name in the stars, though no one around him could have predicted it at first, not even himself. Born John Jungkook in Busan, South Korea, he was just an ordinary boy with extraordinary dreams that he could not yet fully put into words. The youngest in his family, he grew up surrounded by modest surroundings, carrying within him a mixture of innocence, shyness, and curiosity that made him different in ways only time would reveal. In his early years, Jungkook wasn't the loudest voice in the room nor the child who sought the spotlight, but rather a quiet observer, someone who felt emotions deeply, someone who carried the desire to express himself through something greater than words. Music, dance, and art would later become his refuge, but at the start, all he knew was the pull of a dream that seemed larger than his world. In those days, no one could have imagined that this boy would grow into one of the most recognizable and beloved figures on the planet, hailed not only as the Golden Maknae of BTS but as a symbol of perseverance, hard work, and inspiration for millions across the globe. Life in Busan gave Jungkook grounding, a sense of simplicity, and an upbringing that taught him the value of family, humility, and resilience. Busan is a city by the sea, alive with culture and warmth, yet for Jungkook it was simply home, a place where he first discovered what it meant to dream. He watched the world of K-pop from afar, fascinated by performers on TV, inspired by voices that could move hearts and by choreography that could tell stories beyond words. As a child, he didn't yet realize that these performances weren't just entertainment, they were shaping his destiny. He began to mimic the singers and dancers he saw on television, at first playfully, then with more and more seriousness as he discovered that he had a gift, not just a pastime. His natural voice had a clarity, an emotional depth far beyond his years, and his movements carried rhythm and precision that seemed unusual for a boy so young. Still, despite the early sparks of talent, there were shadows that lingered, doubts, fears, and the question of whether someone like him from a modest background could truly achieve something so great. When he was old enough to audition, Jungkook took his first major step into the world that would one day know his name. He auditioned for Superstar K, a popular Korean talent show, and though he did not win, his performance caught the eyes of industry scouts from some of the biggest entertainment companies in Korea. Imagine the heart of a young boy, barely a teenager, suddenly faced with choices that could change the trajectory of his life. Offers came, opportunities knocked, and yet he had to decide which path to take. Eventually, it was Big Hit Entertainment, a then small and relatively unknown company, that he chose to trust, not because they were the biggest or most powerful, but because they saw in him not just talent but potential, not just a performer but a person worth nurturing. This decision would become one of the most pivotal moments of his life. Jungkook moved to Seoul at a very young age to train as a trainee under Big Hit. For a boy from Busan, the bustling city life of Seoul was overwhelming, filled with challenges, uncertainties, and loneliness. He left behind his family, his comfort zone, and everything familiar, stepping into a world where every day was a test of willpower. Training was grueling, long hours of singing, dancing, exercising, and repeating routines until exhaustion became a constant companion. At times, he doubted himself, wondering if he had made the right choice, wondering if he was strong enough to keep going. But deep inside, he carried a fire, a stubbornness, and a quiet determination that kept him moving forward. Even when he cried alone, even when the days felt too heavy, he kept practicing, pushing, and promising himself that he would not give up. As he trained, he found himself surrounded by others who were just as hungry, just as tired, and just as determined. Among them were the boys who would later become his brothers, the members of BTS. In those early days, BTS wasn't a global sensation. In fact, many doubted they would even make it. Big Hit was small, their resources limited, and the odds stacked against them. But together, they pushed through, bonding through shared struggle, sweat, and sacrifice. Jungkook, though the youngest, quickly became known for his versatility, his ability to sing, dance, and later even rap and produce. He was called the Golden Maknae, not because things came easy to him, but because he worked tirelessly to make sure he was good at everything he touched. Every day he strived to prove himself worthy, not only to the world but to the older members who looked after him like family. Debuting with BTS was the beginning of a journey that would change everything. At first, the world didn't notice. They faced criticism, rejection, and ridicule. They performed on small stages, endured harsh comments, and were overlooked by mainstream media. Jungkook, as the youngest, felt the weight of these struggles deeply, but instead of breaking him, it hardened his resolve. He looked to his youngs, to RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, and V, and found strength in their unity. Together, they began to grow, slowly winning hearts, slowly building a fanbase that would one day shake the world. Jungkook's voice became one of the pillars of BTS's sound. Pure, emotional, and powerful, capable of capturing the hearts of millions. His dancing improved with relentless practice, his stage presence grew more magnetic, and with each comeback, he transformed further into the star he was meant to be. Jungkook's story is not just about talent, it is about grit. It is about waking up every morning knowing that success is not guaranteed, but giving everything anyway. It is about facing the harshest criticism and choosing to rise above it. It is about feeling homesick, exhausted, and insecure, yet deciding to keep going because the dream mattered more than the pain. Over time, his sacrifices paid off, and BTS went from underdogs to global icons, breaking records, selling out stadiums, and becoming the voice of a generation. And at the center of it all was Jungkook, the boy from Busan who once doubted if he was good enough, now standing as one of the most admired and loved idols in the world. Even as BTS conquered the world, Jungkook never forgot where he came from. His humility, his connection to fans, and his constant striving for improvement set him apart. He never allowed success to make him complacent. Instead, he worked harder, practiced longer, and gave more of himself to his art. His journey teaches us that greatness is not born overnight, that behind every shining stage is a story of sacrifice, pain, and resilience. Jungkook shows that you can come from anywhere, face anything, and still rise to extraordinary heights if you believe in yourself and never give up. As BTS began to find their footing, Jungkook found himself in a whirlwind of emotions and challenges that would test his spirit in ways he never imagined. Being the youngest meant he was often shielded by his older members, but it also meant the pressure to live up to expectations was enormous. Fans looked at him with admiration, calling him the Golden Maknae, a title that seemed flattering yet weighed heavily on his shoulders. To be golden meant to be flawless, to excel at everything, to constantly rise higher, and for a boy still in his teens, the burden was immense. But instead of letting it crush him, Jungkook used that pressure as fuel, transforming it into an unstoppable drive to improve. He practiced longer than anyone, stayed up later, rehearsed tirelessly, and challenged himself to master every detail of performance. There were nights when exhaustion brought him to tears, when doubt whispered in his ear that he was too young, too unprepared, too small to handle the magnitude of his dream, but every single time, he got back up and tried again. That resilience became his defining quality. The reason why he shines so brightly on stage, the reason why his story resonates with millions. The early years of BTS were not glamorous. In fact, they were some of the hardest times in Jungkook's life. The group faced mockery, rejection from big award shows, and criticism from those who doubted their legitimacy. The music industry in Korea was competitive and cutthroat, and BTS, coming from a small company, were constantly underestimated. They slept in cramped dorms, shared limited resources, and often had to do everything with little support. For Jungkook, who had left his home at such a young age, the homesickness sometimes felt unbearable. He missed his family, his childhood comfort, and the normal teenage years he never got to experience. Yet in the darkness of those moments, he looked at his members, who became his second family, and found the strength to endure. The bond between the 7 boys was forged not just by music, but by hardship and survival. They carried each other when one fell, they pushed each other when motivation waned, and they celebrated the smallest victories as if they were grand triumphs. For Jungkook, this brotherhood became his anchor, the foundation that allowed him to keep chasing his dream even when the world seemed against him. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. With each comeback, BTS gained more fans, known as ARMY, who recognized their authenticity, their talent, and their sincerity. Jungkook stood out not only for his voice but for his presence, his ability to command the stage with an intensity and charisma that felt far beyond his years. His voice, pure yet powerful, carried emotion that touched the hearts of fans around the globe. Whether singing of love, loss, hope, or pain, Jungkook delivered each note with such honesty that listeners felt his journey within their own lives. As BTS's music began to spread beyond Korea, Jungkook's name traveled with it, And soon the boy from Busan who once doubted his place was now being called the voice of a generation. Yet even in the midst of growing fame, Jungkook remained humble, grounded, and deeply connected to his fans. He never took their love for granted, always striving to give them his very best. But success did not erase the struggles, it only brought new ones. As BTS entered the global stage, Jungkook faced the pressure of international recognition, of living up to the expectations of millions watching his every move. Mistakes felt bigger, criticism harsher, and the weight heavier. He had to learn not only how to perform but how to endure the scrutiny of the spotlight. Every gesture, every word, every action was magnified. Yet through it all, Jungkook chose to stay authentic. He laughed when he was happy, cried when he was overwhelmed, and showed his vulnerability to the world without shame. That openness became part of his strength, teaching fans that being real, even in moments of weakness, is far more powerful than pretending to be perfect. The defining moments of BTS's rise were historic. Their first Daesang win, their first stadium concert, their first Billboard chart success, their first Grammy nomination. Each milestone was a testament to years of blood, sweat, and tears. For Jungkook, standing on those stages meant more than glory. It meant validation, proof that all the sacrifices, all the nights away from home, all the doubt and fear had been worth it. He remembered the boy who once sang in his room in Busan, unsure of what the future held, and realized that he had come farther than he ever dreamed. And yet, instead of resting on his achievements, he kept striving for more. He learned instruments, experimented with production, pushed his voice to new heights, and trained his body to master the most difficult choreography. To him, success was not an end. It was a beginning, a constant journey of growth. Perhaps one of the most inspiring aspects of Jungkook's story is his humility. Despite being one of the most famous idols in the world, he carries himself with gratitude and simplicity. He speaks often of how much he owes to his fans, to his members, and to his family. He never allows fame to distance him from his roots. Even when performing for tens of thousands in stadiums, he looks into the crowd and sees not numbers, but individuals who have believed in him, who have walked with him through every stage of his journey. That humility has made him not only a superstar but a role model, teaching millions that true greatness is not measured by how high you rise, but by how grounded you remain. Jungkook's success story is not just about music, fame, or records. It is about resilience, perseverance, and the courage to keep going despite the odds. He is living proof that a boy from a small town with nothing but a dream can rise to become a global icon. His journey reminds us that pain can be transformed into power, fear into strength, and doubt into determination. For anyone who has ever felt too small, too ordinary, or too afraid, Jungkook's life shines as a beacon of hope, proving that if you dare to dream and work relentlessly, you too can create a destiny beyond imagination.